Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to be creating some neutral fall and Halloween home decor. For my first project, I'm going to be working on this hardcover book that I thrifted, and I'm going to begin by using Paint Couture's French Putty mineral paint. I'm going to lay down my first coat. Now I am going for a vintage look here, so I don't mind if some of that black peeks through. I don't need it to be perfect. I am going to obviously paint the spine and the back of the book cover as well. Now this paint has a built-in sealer as well, so it does save me a step. Once my paint was dry, I took out IOD's Gloria Paint Inlay. This is from their Christmas release last year. There are 2 pages that have some lovely pumpkins and sort of fall themed designs to choose from. I'm going to be using these pumpkins. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin to transfer my paint inlay today. So I am going to be positioning the pumpkins down the bottom. So I'm going to lay down a generous coat of the clear coat. You can also use a chalk paint or a mineral paint with this. I want the color that I have underneath to be visible, so I am working with a clear coat today. Once I'm happy with that coverage, I'm going to mist the back of the paint inlay, and then I'm going to position it design side down in my wet clear coat. I did have to do a little bit of repositioning, and then once I had it in the spot that I wanted, I just used my fingers to start pressing that down. There is a little groove, but I'm going to be covering that a bit later, so I wasn't too worried about that. So I'm just going to continue to add pressure. I then took out my mister to thoroughly dampen that inlay. This helps to activate those paint pigments. And then I also grabbed a wet wipe to provide further moisture, but also just to make sure that I have all of that paint inlay pressed down into that medium. I did use a hairdryer to dry my paint inlay. I then used a water mister to mist my inlay. This is going to help it to release from the surface. I am then going to give it about 60 seconds, and then I'm going to come in and start gently pulling that inlay back. If when I'm pulling the inlay back I feel any resistance, I can just wet that inlay again and give it a bit more time and then pull it back. I dried that off, and then I took out this stencil that I had in my stash. I just want to use the Farmer's Market and the Open Daily design to go up the top. You could use stamps or perhaps another stencil. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Pitch Black and a paintbrush. I'm going to dab off the excess, and then I'm going to come in and start dabbing and stippling that paint over the top of the stencil. You can see that I have that stencil held down firmly with my hand. I'm not shifting it, and I'm also taking my time, making sure to offload each time. You don't want to overload your brush. And also, I don't mind if I miss a few areas because I am going for more of a worn look to tie in with that paint inlay. When I'm finished, I'm going to carefully lift that stencil up. Now, when that was dry, I came in with my 220 grit sandpaper block. I'm going to go in and just gently do some distressing. Again, I do want this to have more of a worn look to tie in with the paint inlay below. After brushing off that sanding dust, I took out that Extreme Guard in Satin again. I'm using this to seal my stencil and my paint inlay. I did get a little bit of smearing here and there, but again, I wasn't too worried. I want this to have a bit more of a rustic look. You can see I've got a wet wipe there to pull it back a little. And I actually ended up going in and purposely reactivated the pigments just on the pumpkins to give it a bit more of a sepia undertone. Now, you don't have to use a brush-on sealer. You can use a spray sealer instead if you're worried about smearing. When the clear coat was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Firelight mineral paint and Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to get some of that Firelight out, and I'm going to lighten it up with the Simply White chalk paint. I want this to have a bit of a lighter, more subdued tone to it, so I'm going to mix those together. I didn't measure it out perfectly. I just did it until I was happy with it. I'm going to use my mister to water it down a little bit, and I'm also going to offload on a paper towel, and I'm just going to go in and almost sort of color in just the pumpkins. Now, I don't want to completely hide the detail underneath. We've got that clear coat down so that I don't further smear it, and so I can wipe back as much as I want. But I'm just going to continue to add in that color. I feel like this is a really nice touch. It definitely sort of customizes the look a bit more, and again lends itself to that beautiful sort of more neutral look while still bringing in a little bit of color. For the leaves, I'm using Paint Couture's Basil chalk paint. Just like before, I'm going to offload most of that paint and then just go in and dab. You can see I'm using my finger at times to pull back if I feel like there's too much of that paint there. I'm just going to continue until I have all of those leaves painted with that green. When that was dry, I took out that clear coat again, and I'm going to add a final clear coat over the top to seal in all of those different layers. When that was dry, I took out this linen ribbon that I had in my stash. I want to put this on the spine of the book. I didn't want to leave the spine as it is, but I didn't want to bring in too much else. There's a lot going on the front cover. So I'm going to measure out how much I'm going to need. I'm going to cut that ribbon to size. I'm then going to fray the edge so that it ties in with the other edges. And then I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Decoupage medium, and I'm actually going to add that product along the spine. We're going to basically decoupage the ribbon onto the spine. I really liked the pop of white this was going to bring. We're bringing in another neutral tone, and I feel like it will feel a bit more finished. I'm not doing anything else to the back though. I'm just going to tidy that up and make sure it's neat and tidy. I'm going to press that ribbon into the damp decoupage medium, making sure I've got good contact there, and then I'm going to go in and add extra product wherever it's needed on the back and the front. I didn't add any more decoupage medium over the top. I felt like it was stuck good enough. I then went in with my hot glue gun. I'm going to add a bead of hot glue down the spine of the book, down the side, and then I'm going to press some twine into that glue. I wanted to add a couple of rows of twine there, just again to bring in another texture, but it does still have that sort of more rustic and neutral feel. Once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'm going to add a bit more glue to make sure it's secure on the back, and then I'm going to trim off the excess twine and glue those pieces down. And here's a look at our finished book. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I think that the paint inlays just look stunning on this book, and it would look great on a coffee table, I think. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my second project, I'm going to be working on this plain little wooden crate that I had in my stash. I think I picked it up for about $2. I'm also going to be using IOD's Autumn Cottage Mould. This is from their Christmas release last year. I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Rapid Casting Resin as well. I'm going to pour out equal parts step 1 and step 2 into a silicone cup. You can use clay for this. I just decided that I wanted to use the resin for this particular step. I'm then going to stir it really well for about 30 to 40 seconds, making sure it's really well combined, and then I'm going to start pouring it into the pumpkin. I knew I definitely wanted the pumpkin and that I wanted the little wheat design that was underneath it, but I still had a lot of resin left, so I thought I would pour out some extra pieces in case I wanted to add to my design. My resin was ready after about 10 minutes, and then I went in and took the pumpkin out first, and obviously those little wheat designs down the bottom there. I'm going to be adding these to the side of the crate, and I'm going to be attaching them using Gorilla Super Glue gel. So this is a permanent hold. So I'm going to add that to the back of the pumpkin first. This does have little grooves. This crate has grooves, so resin really was a good choice for this as well. I'm going to press down the pumpkin in the center, making sure it's well adhered, and then I'm going to add the glue to the back of the wheat piece, and I'm going to have that sit underneath the pumpkin. I gave the glue a couple of minutes to completely set, and then I took out Paint Couture's Cozy Beige chalk paint. I'm going to be going over the top of the pumpkin and the entire outside, but for this project I want to go for a bit more of a two-toned look, so I'm not going to be painting the inside of the crate. I thought it would be nice to keep that as a natural wood tone. I am going to do something else to it, but I just thought the two-toned look just really elevated the piece without needing to go over the top. and also I feel like it does still tie in with that more neutral look that we're going for. So I'm just going to work my way around the crate, painting the outside. I'm going to paint on the inside of the handles too. And then when that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Antiquing Glaze. I began by adding it to the base, but decided to use my water mister. This is a very helpful thing to do when you are working with unsealed wood. The water helps the glaze to move because this glaze is like a semi-gel stain. So it's sort of watering it down and allowing it to soak in a bit more evenly into that wood. So as you can see, I've applied it to the base. I'm then working my way up to the sides of the crate as well. I'm trying not to get too much on the cozy beige section at this stage because I wasn't 100% sure where I was going with the outside. So I'm going to continue to add that glaze to the inside, and then I used a paper towel to pull back the excess glaze and just to make sure it was sort of all evenly applied. When that was dry, I took that same brush that I was using with the Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to be adding that over the top of the pumpkin. I really wanted to be able to see all of the beautiful details and depth of the resin casting, so I wanted to add the glaze, and here I'm using a wet wipe to pull it back so it's going to sit down in those details. I'm also adding it over the top of the cozy beige in some areas. I wanted to bring in a little bit more warmth so it tied in with the inside as well, but not going for full coverage, and I am wiping a lot of it back. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Simply White Chalk Paint. I'm going to get some on my paintbrush. I'm going to offload it onto that paper towel, and then I'm doing some dry brushing. I'm starting by going over the top of the high points of the resin castings. Again, this is revealing all that lovely texture, and then I'm going over the top of the wooden parts. But with those, I'm going back and forth. I want it to look like lighter flecks in that wood tone, and if I get a little bit too much, I can go in and quickly remove that. I'm then going to work my way around the outside of the crate, again just running that brush over the top of the outside in horizontal lines to lighten it up. And then I moved on and repeated the same process on the inside. I just wanted to lighten it and also tie the outside with the inside of the box. Obviously this is an optional step if you liked the darker tones, or if it's the other way around, you could have left out the glaze step and just kept everything nice and light. I can definitely see this kind of piece being used as a dining table centerpiece filled with pumpkins or pine cones. It's quite a versatile piece that you could use in any room really for a little bit of extra storage. Finally, to seal my piece, I'm using Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. I'm going to seal the entire outside and the inside as well. If you don't have a clear coat, a wax would work as well. And here's a look at our finished pumpkin crate. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I'm loving the look of those IOD molds on the outside and the two-toned look. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. For my final project today, I'm going to be working on this little jug that I thrifted for just a couple of dollars, and I'm going to begin by using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer. I'm going to lay down my first coat. It doesn't matter if this coat is a little bit messy. This primer is going to help my paint to stick really well to this slick surface, but it's also going to block that brown and black stripe that's on there from coming through my paint layers later on. Now I'm only going to paint the outside and the handle. I'm going to leave the inside, but it's personal preference if you decide to do this. I then took out IOD's Hello Pumpkin mold. I'm going to be dusting the leaves with cornstarch. I wasn't sure which one I was going to use straight away, so I just dusted them all. I'm then going to be using some Resin Air Dry Clay. I'm going to work that clay into the leaf molds, pushing that excess out using that micro rim to get a nice clean edge, and then I'm going to flex the mold and pull that casting out. I'm then going to be using Sealy's Quickset wood glue on the back of my clay casting, and I'm going to be gluing this to the surface. I've got 2 layers of my primer already down. I was trying to decide how I wanted the leaf to look, but I thought I wanted it to look like it's sort of fallen out of a tree. So I'm gently molding that to the surface. I am then going to use a wet wipe to tidy up any excess glue. And after a few hours, I took out Paint Couture's farmhouse linen. I'm going to use this over the top of the leaf. It's got a nice little crust on there so I don't damage it, but I am still trying to be gentle. I'm going to go in and start adding my farmhouse linen to the rest of the jug. I felt like it was a pretty close match really for the color of the inside of the jug anyway. So I am focusing on more neutral projects. I know not everybody likes to have lots of color in their decor, but this is definitely a project you could customize. You could paint that little jug any color you like or bring in more color on the leaf itself. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Van Dyke Brown Glaze, and I'm going to be just going over the top of the leaf at this stage. I'm going over the top, just being careful not to get any of that glaze on the background area of the jug. I'm then using a wet wipe to pull back some of that. This glaze is going to help give the leaf some definition. And then I went around the top and I'm running my brush over the top of the top lip. I don't have any extra product on there, so this is going to be really light, very subtle effect. And then I moved on to doing that to the handle. I got a little bit more product on my brush and I'm just lightly going over the top of that handle just to sort of tie in the handle with the rest of the piece. So I'm going to use a wet wipe to pull some of that back. And then when the glaze was dry, I offloaded the extra farmhouse linen on a paper towel, and now I'm going in and going over the top of the high points of the leaf and also lightly over the top of the other areas with the glaze just to soften the look. Finally, to seal the jug, I'm using Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. And here's a look at our finished jug. This was a quick and easy flip, but I think it looks very sweet with that little autumn leaf there. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. I really hope that you enjoyed today's video and that it's given you some ideas on how you can use thrifted finds to create beautiful fall and Halloween home decor for your home. Let me know if you had a favorite project from today. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find a full product list and my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks for watching.